The autumn rain fell in steady sheets across the Vancouver waterfront, turning the cobblestone streets into dark mirrors that reflected the glow of street lamps. Chen stood beneath the awning of an abandoned fishery, his collar turned up against the wind, watching the scene unfold across the narrow street. A woman in her mid-30s, South Asian, dressed in business casual attire, walked briskly toward the entrance of a small bookstore. Her name was Priya Sharma, though Marcus didn't know that yet. What he did know, from years of observing human behavior, was that she was about to walk into trouble. 3 young men lounged against the bookstore's brick facade, their postures deliberately casual but their eyes sharp and calculating. The one in the center, a lean white kid with bleached hair and a snake tattoo creeping up his neck, stepped forward as Priya approached. "Evening," he called out, his voice carrying false friendliness. "You're the one who owns this place, right?" Priya slowed but didn't stop. "The bookstore?" "Yes. Can I help you?" The bleached blonde kid, his name was Kyle Brennan, though Marcus would learn that later, spread his arms in a gesture of mock openness. "Just being neighborly. Name's Kyle. These are my associates, Tommy and Jax." He gestured to the stocky redhead and the wiry black kid flanking him. Marcus shifted his weight, his instincts prickling. He recognized the setup. This wasn't a friendly conversation. "I appreciate that," Priya said carefully, "but I really need to get inside. It's been a long day." Kyle's smile hardened. "See, that's what we want to talk about. Long days, hard work. You've been doing real well here, haven't you? Books flying off the shelves, coffee bar always packed. Must be making good money." Priya's hand tightened on her bag. "Business is fine. Now if you'll excuse me." Tommy stepped forward, blocking her path to the door. "Thing is, this neighborhood? It's got certain operational costs. You know, to make sure nothing bad happens to successful businesses like yours." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Protection racket. Classic street-level extortion." "I pay my rent and my taxes," Priya said, her voice firm despite the tremor Marcus could detect. "I don't owe anyone else anything." Jax laughed, a sharp bark that echoed off the whetstones. "Lady, you don't get it. This isn't about the government. This is about us. We keep things safe around here." "Safe from what?" Priya challenged. Kyle's grin turned predatory. "Safe from us, mostly. But there's other threats too. Vandalism, theft, accidents. You'd be amazed what can happen to a place like this if the wrong people decide to make an example of it." Priya tried to step around Tommy, but he mirrored her movement. "I'm not interested. Move aside." $500 a week, Kyle said flatly, dropping the pretense of friendliness. "That's reasonable for what you're pulling in. We start light, build trust. You'll barely notice it." "I notice everything taken from me," Priya shot back. "And I'm not giving you a single dollar." Marcus watched as Kyle's expression darkened. The kid's hand went to his pocket, and though Marcus couldn't see what was there, the gesture was universal, a threat wrapped in implication. "You're making a mistake," Kyle said softly, dangerously. "Ask around. People who don't cooperate with us? They regret it. The only mistake," Priya said, her voice shaking now with anger rather than fear, "is you thinking I'm someone who can be intimidated." Tommy grabbed her arm. "Let's talk about this inside, where it's private." That was when something in Marcus broke. For months, he'd been invisible. A drifter, a ghost haunting the edges of society, sleeping in shelters when he could, under bridges when he couldn't. He'd told himself the same lie every day: not your problem, not your fight, you've done enough for one lifetime. But watching Priya try to wrench her arm free while Kyle pulled what looked like a switchblade from his pocket, that shattered every excuse Marcus had built. His feet moved before his mind caught up. "Let her go." The words came out flat, cold, carrying a weight that made all 4 people freeze and turn toward him. Marcus stepped out of the shadows, the rain immediately soaking through his worn jacket. He was tall, lean in the way that spoke of missed meals rather than athleticism, his dark hair long and unkempt. His beard was shot through with gray. He looked exactly like what he was, a homeless man who'd seen better days. Kyle's surprise lasted only a moment before it morphed into amusement. "And who the hell are you supposed to be? The neighborhood bum?" Marcus's eyes, dark and unervingly steady, locked onto Kyle's. "Someone who's asking nicely. Once. Let her go and walk away." Jax burst into laughter. "Oh man, this is rich. Hey, old guy, why don't you go find a dumpster to sleep in? This doesn't concern you." "Everything that happens on this street concerns me," Marcus said quietly. "I see everything. Including what you're trying to do here." Tommy released Priya's arm and took a step toward Marcus. "You got some nerve, talking to us like that. You know who Kyle's cousin is? You know what kind of connections we have?" Marcus didn't move, didn't blink. I know you're three punks trying to shake down a businesswoman who's done nothing to you. I know that makes you cowards. And I know if you don't leave right now, this gets complicated for everyone. Kyle's face flushed with anger. He pointed the knife toward Marcus. You threatening us? You're threatening us? He looked at his friends, incredulous. This homeless piece of trash thinks he can threaten us. I'm not threatening, Marcus said, his tone utterly calm. I'm explaining what happens next if you continue. Yeah? Kyle sneered. And what happens next? Marcus took one measured step forward. You learn that assumptions about people based on their appearance are often fatal mistakes. The casual certainty in his voice made Kyle hesitate. There was something in the way Marcus held himself, despite the ratty clothes and the gaunt frame, that suggested he wasn't bluffing, but Kyle was young, stupid, and had an audience. He couldn't back down. Tommy, Jax, he said, not taking his eyes off Marcus. Teach this guy some manners. Show him what happens when you stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Tommy moved first, throwing a wide, telegraphed punch that Marcus could have avoided in his sleep. He swayed left, letting the fist sail past his ear, and drove his elbow into Tommy's ribs with surgical precision. The crack of bone was audible even over the rain. Tommy dropped with a strangled gasp. Jax came at him from the side, faster, more aggressive. He was a boxer, Marcus could tell from the stance, and his combinations were sharper. But Marcus had fought boxers before. He had fought everyone before. He slipped the first jab, blocked the second, and when Jax committed to a right cross, Marcus caught the arm, twisted, and used Jax's own momentum to send him face first into the brick wall. Jax crumpled. 0.7 seconds. Two men down. Kyle stared, his knife hand shaking now, his bravado evaporating like mist in sunlight. Marcus turned to face him fully. Last chance. Walk away. Kyle's response was to lunge with the knife, a desperate, clumsy attack driven by panic. Marcus sidestepped, caught Kyle's wrist, and applied pressure to a nerve cluster he'd memorized decades ago in a training facility half a world away. The knife clattered to the wet ground. Marcus swept Kyle's legs, dropping him hard onto the cobblestones. Stay down, Marcus said quietly. Kyle, gasping and clutching his wrist, didn't need to be told twice. Marcus turned to Priya, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. You okay? She nodded slowly, finding her voice. Yes. Thank you. Who are you? Just someone passing through, Marcus said. He glanced down at Kyle. These three won't bother you again tonight. But they'll come back, probably with friends. You should call the police. The police? Priya shook her head, frustrated. They'll take a report and tell me to invest in better locks. This neighborhood, it's not a priority for them. Marcus studied her for a moment, seeing the exhaustion and determination warring in her expression. Then you need a better plan. Kyle groaned, struggling to sit up. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, old man. We've got people. Lots of people. You think this is over? Marcus looked down at him with something approaching pity. For tonight, yes. Go home. Think about whether this life is really worth it. Kyle spat blood onto the stones but didn't argue further. He hauled himself up, helped Tommy to his feet, and the three of them limped away into the rain, Jax's face already swelling from his encounter with the wall. Priya let out a shaky breath. That was incredible. Where did you learn to fight like that? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He picked up the dropped knife, folded it, and handed it to Priya. Keep this. Evidence, if you need it. You didn't answer my question. I've had training, Marcus said simply. Military? A pause. Something like that. Priya studied him more closely now, the way he held himself, the economy of his movements, the 1,000-yard stare that occasionally flickered across his features. Special forces? Marcus met her eyes. Does it matter? It matters because you just saved me from something very bad, and I'd like to know who I'm thanking. Marcus Chen, he said after a moment. And you don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same. Priya gave him a look that suggested she very much doubted that. Priya Sharma. And no, most people would have kept walking. Especially looking like she caught herself, embarrassed. Looking like a homeless drifter? Marcus finished, a faint smile touching his lips. Because that's what I am. I didn't mean, it's fine. It's accurate. He glanced down the street where Kyle and his crew had disappeared. But you need to take what I said seriously. They'll be back. Guys like that don't let this go. It's about reputation. Priya wrapped her arms around herself against the cold rain. Then what am I supposed to do? I've built this place from nothing. I'm not going to let some street punks take it from me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. You have security cameras? Basic ones, yes. They're mostly for insurance purposes. Show me. Priya hesitated, then nodded. She unlocked the bookstore door and gestured for Marcus to follow. The shop was warm, welcoming, everything the street outside wasn't. Shelves lined with books rose to the ceiling, and the scent of coffee and old paper filled the air. A small cafe occupied one corner, its espresso machine gleaming under soft lighting. It's beautiful, Marcus said quietly, and meant it. Priya smiled despite herself. Thank you. It's taken me 8 years to build. I started with a loan I could barely afford and a dream that seemed impossible. Now. She gestured around. Now it's everything I have. Marcus understood that kind of investment. The kind that went beyond money into something more fundamental: identity, purpose, proof of existence. She led him to a small office in the back where a computer monitored 4 camera feeds. Marcus studied them with a professional's eye. These cover the main areas, but there are blind spots. Side entrance, the alley, parts of the street. I know, Priya said. Better cameras cost money I don't always have. Marcus nodded slowly. We can work with what you've got. But you need to understand something: security isn't just about cameras. It's about preparation, awareness, and being willing to act when the moment comes. We? Priya raised an eyebrow. Marcus realized what he'd said. I meant you. You need to prepare. But you used we. Priya crossed her arms, studying him. Why would you say that unless you were planning to help? I'm not. Marcus stopped, frustrated with himself. I don't stay in one place. I can't. Can't or won't? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus looked away, unable to answer. Priya made a decision. Look, I don't know your story, and I'm not going to pry. But you just saved me from something terrible, and those guys are coming back. You said so yourself. I need help. Real help. And it seems to me that you could use, well, a place to be. Even temporarily. Marcus's instinct was to refuse. He'd learned the hard way that attachments were liabilities. But something about the way Priya looked at him, not with pity, but with genuine respect, made him hesitate. Just for a few days, Priya pressed. Help me shore up security, make sure they don't come back. There's a storage room upstairs with a cot. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. Warm and dry. 2 things Marcus hadn't experienced consistently in months. Why would you trust a stranger? He asked. Because that stranger didn't keep walking when someone needed help. That tells me more about your character than any resume ever could. Marcus looked around the office, then back at Priya. Against every survival instinct he'd developed, he found himself nodding. A few days. Just until you're secure. Priya's smile was genuine and warm. Deal. Neither of them could have known, in that moment, that those few days would change everything. Marcus woke to the sound of footsteps on the floor below. His hand instinctively went to his side, reaching for a weapon that hadn't been there in years, before his conscious mind caught up. He was in the storage room above Priya's bookstore, not in a combat zone, though sometimes, he reflected, the line between those 2 things was thinner than people liked to believe. He'd spent the previous day walking the perimeter of the property, noting vulnerabilities, suggesting improvements. Priya had listened carefully, implementing what she could afford. They'd repositioned cameras, reinforced the back door, and established a protocol for what to do if Kyle's crew returned, but Marcus knew it wouldn't be enough. Guys like Kyle didn't just give up. They escalated, dressed quickly in clothes Priya had left for him, simple but clean, the first new garments he'd worn in over a year, and descended the narrow stairs to the bookstore. Priya was already there, setting up the coffee bar for the day. She looked up as he entered, her expression troubled. Morning, Marcus said. Something wrong? She handed him her phone without a word. On the screen was a text message from an unknown number. Think about our offer. Next time we won't ask nice. You got 48 hours. Marcus's jaw tightened. When did this come? 3 in the morning. Marcus, how did they get my number? Not hard if they know your name and business. Public records, social media. He studied the message again. 48 hours. That's specific. They're planning something. Priya set down the coffee carafe she'd been holding, her hands shaking slightly. I can't live like this. Looking over my shoulder, jumping at every text message. You won't have to, Marcus said quietly. We end this before their deadline. How? By making it clear that targeting you costs more than it's worth. He looked up from the phone. But I need to know more about them. Kyle mentioned connections. Do you know what that means around here? Priya nodded slowly. There's a guy named Vincent Keller. Runs most of the protection rackets in this part of the waterfront. If Kyle's working for him, we're not just dealing with street-level thugs. Marcus absorbed this information. Organization changed the equation. Then we need leverage. Something that makes Keller pull his people back. Like what? Like evidence that goes beyond a few street hassles. Something that threatens his operation. Marcus thought for a moment. Your cameras, they cover the street pretty well, right? The front, yes. Then we watch. Document. Kyle's crew isn't just targeting you. If they're working for Keller, they're running the same scam on multiple businesses. We catch them on camera making threats, taking money, and suddenly they're not just a nuisance, they're a criminal conspiracy. Priya's eyes widened. You want to use me as bait? I want to use your location as an observation post, Marcus corrected. We don't engage directly. We just record, build a case, and then hand it to someone who can actually do something about it. You said the police don't care about this neighborhood. They don't, Marcus agreed. But they care about organized crime when it's handed to them with evidence and a bow. And more importantly, Keller cares about exposure. Men like him thrive in shadow. Light is their enemy. Priya considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay. We try it your way. But Marcus, if this goes wrong, it won't, he said with more confidence than he felt. Trust me. The next 36 hours were a masterclass in patience. Marcus positioned himself at the upstairs window, watching the street with the focused intensity of a sniper on overwatch. Priya ran the bookstore below, maintaining normalcy while Marcus documented everything, and there was plenty to document. Kyle's crew appeared 3 times, each visit targeting a different business. The bakery 2 doors down. The vintage clothing shop across the street. A small accounting firm on the corner. Each time, the pattern was the same: veiled threats, demands for money, intimidation. Marcus's camera captured it all. They're not even being subtle, Priya observed, watching the footage over Marcus's shoulder. Don't they know cameras exist? They know, Marcus said. They just don't care. In neighborhoods like this, people don't usually report. And even if they do, it's one person's word against theirs. But with video evidence from multiple incidents, patterns of behavior. He let the implication hang. It becomes a case, Priya finished. Exactly. On the evening of the second day, as the 48-hour deadline approached, Marcus downloaded all the footage onto multiple drives. He'd compiled nearly 4 hours of material, clear evidence of extortion, threats, and in one case, actual assault when a restaurant owner had tried to refuse. This is good, Marcus said, reviewing the final clips. Really good. This goes to the right person. Kyle and his crew are finished. And if Kyle flips on Keller to cut a deal. He didn't need to finish the thought. Priya sat on the edge of the desk, her expression troubled. So we call the police now? Not yet, Marcus said. First, we make sure Kyle knows what we have. Give him a chance to walk away on his own. If he's smart, he'll take it. If not, we're back to the police who might not care. Marcus met her eyes. If not, I handle it differently. The steel in his voice made Priya shiver. What does that mean? It means I've lived in a world where the rule of law doesn't always reach, Marcus said quietly. And I learned other ways to solve problems. Ways I'm not proud of, but ways that work. Priya was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about violence. I'm talking about ensuring you're safe. By whatever means necessary. Marcus, I don't want you to. She was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from downstairs. Both of them froze. Then Marcus moved, fast and silent, grabbing the tire iron he'd kept near the desk and descending the stairs in 3 bounds. The bookstore's front window was shattered, jagged glass teeth framing a brick that now lay among scattered books. But it wasn't the vandalism that made Marcus's blood run cold, it was the note tied to the brick. Priya appeared behind him, gasping at the destruction. Marcus untied the note and read it aloud. 48 hours is up. Time to pay, or this is just the beginning. Tonight, midnight, we come back for what we're owed. Be smart. It's signed, Priya whispered, reading over his shoulder. VK. Vincent Keller, Marcus confirmed. Kyle went crying to his boss. What do we do? Marcus looked at the shattered window, the scattered glass, the threat made manifest in brick and paper. He thought about the life he'd built out of nothing, this careful, invisible existence where he hurt no one and asked for nothing in return. Then he thought about what would happen to Priya if he walked away now. We prepare, he said flatly. They want to escalate? We show them what escalation really looks like. The bookstore was dark, the shattered window covered with plywood that Marcus had installed that afternoon. To anyone passing by, it looked closed, abandoned, defeated. That was exactly the impression Marcus wanted to create. Inside, he and Priya waited in silence. Marcus had positioned himself behind the main counter, with clear sightlines to both entrances. Priya was upstairs in the office's phone in hand, ready to call 911 the moment things got physical. Remember, Marcus had told her earlier, you don't come down no matter what you hear. You call the police, you record everything on your phone, and you stay safe. That's your only job. She'd wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes had stopped her. Now, crouching in the darkness, Marcus felt the old familiar sensation creeping through his veins, the heightened awareness, the slowing of time, the way his senses sharpened until he could hear his own heartbeat. He'd thought this part of him was dead. Apparently, it had just been sleeping. At 11:57, he heard the vehicles pull up outside. Multiple engines. Car doors opening and closing. Voices, low and confident, they weren't even trying to be stealthy. Through the plywood-covered window, Marcus counted shadows. 6, maybe 7. More than Kyle's usual crew. Keller had sent reinforcements. The front door, locked and barred, rattled as someone tested it. Then came the inevitable, the crash of a sledgehammer against wood. 1 hit. 2. 3. The door burst inward, hanging from one hinge. Kyle entered first, flanked by Tommy and Jax, their earlier injuries apparently healed enough for them to be functional. Behind them came 4 others Marcus didn't recognize, bigger, older, moving with the confidence of people who'd done this many times before. Lights, Kyle ordered. 1 of the new guys hit the switch. Nothing happened. Marcus had pulled the breakers. Great, someone muttered. Flashlights. Beams of light cut through the darkness, sweeping across overturned shelves and scattered books. Marcus had staged the destruction carefully, making it look like Priya had abandoned the place in panic. She's not here, Jax said, disappointment clear in his voice. Check the office, Kyle ordered. Back room 2. She's got to be around somewhere. And find that homeless piece of garbage who helped her. I've got plans for him. 2 of the bigger men headed for the stairs. Marcus waited, counting footsteps, measuring distances. The moment they passed his position, he moved. The first guy never saw it coming. Marcus rose from behind the counter and drove the tire iron into the back of his knee with controlled force, enough to cripple, not enough to permanently damage. The man went down with a strangled shout. The second guy spun, raising his flashlight like a weapon. Marcus was already inside his guard, sweeping the legs and using the man's own momentum to slam him into the floor. The flashlight skittered away. Now the others knew he was there. It's him! Tommy shouted. The crazy homeless guy. Kyle's response was immediate, get him. What followed was controlled chaos. Marcus moved through the darkened bookstore like a ghost, using every advantage the terrain offered. He knew where every shelf stood, every stack of books, every concealed obstacle. They didn't. The third attacker tripped over a wire Marcus had strung across the aisle and went face-first into a bookshelf. The fourth took a heavy dictionary to the head, courtesy of Marcus's throwing arm, but there were still 3 left: Kyle, Tommy, and Jax, and they'd learned from last time. They spread out, trying to flank him, forcing Marcus back toward the office stairs. You think you're some kind of hero? Kyle shouted into the darkness. You're nothing. Just another bum who's going to disappear, and nobody's going to care. Marcus didn't waste breath on a response. He was conserving energy, calculating angles, waiting for the right moment. It came when Tommy got impatient and charged blindly around a bookshelf. Marcus caught him with a textbook to the throat, not lethal, but enough to put him on the ground, gasping. 2 left. Jax, Kyle hissed, go around. I'll flush him out. Marcus was already moving to counter when he heard the sound that changed everything, a whimper from upstairs. Priya, his heart seized. One of the men he'd put down must have reached the office before Marcus had stopped him. The calculation shifted instantly. This wasn't about controlling the fight anymore. This was about ending it. Right now, Kyle heard the whimper too, and his grin was audible in his voice. Got your girlfriend up there, hero? Maybe you should come out and we can talk about. Marcus didn't let him finish. He closed the distance between them in 3 explosive strides, abandoning stealth for speed. Kyle tried to bring up his knife, but Marcus caught his wrist, twisted, and drove him into the wall with enough force to crack plaster. The knife clattered away. Jax came at Marcus from the side, wrapping an arm around his throat in a chokehold. For a moment, Marcus was locked in place, the pressure building against his windpipe. Then his training kicked in, techniques drilled into him so deeply they were reflex. He dropped his weight, twisted, and drove his elbow into Jax's solar plexus. The arm loosened. Marcus spun, caught Jax's head, and introduced it to his rising knee. Jax crumpled. Kyle was on his feet again, breathing hard, rage and fear warring in his expression. You don't know who you're messing with, man. Keller's going to. I don't care about Keller, Marcus said coldly. He took a step forward, and something in his bearing made Kyle instinctively step back. I care about that woman upstairs who's done nothing to deserve this. And I care about making sure you never threaten anyone in this neighborhood again. Kyle pulled a phone from his pocket, his hand shaking. I'm calling him right now. He'll send everyone. You're dead, you hear me? Dead. Make the call, Marcus said. I'll wait. Kyle stared at him, thrown by the complete lack of fear in Marcus's voice. His thumb hovered over the screen when the sirens started, multiple cars, closing fast. The red and blue lights painted the windows. Kyle's face went ashen. What did you? I didn't do anything, Marcus said. But I'm betting someone upstairs did. Priya's voice came from the top of the stairs, steady despite the fear Marcus could hear beneath it. Police are outside, Kyle. You should probably run. Or stay, and explain all this to them. Your choice. Kyle looked at the door, at Marcus, at the approaching lights. For a moment, Marcus thought he might actually go down swinging out of sheer stupid pride, but self-preservation won out. Kyle bolted for the back entrance, stumbling over his fallen crew in his panic to escape. Marcus let him go. He wasn't the mission. Keeping Priya safe was. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time and found Priya in the office doorway, phone in hand, a nasty bruise forming on her cheek where someone had clearly struck her. You okay? Marcus asked, his voice tight with concern. Better than the guy in here, Priya said, gesturing to the office where one of Kyle's crew lay hogtied with computer cables, unconscious. Turns out all those self-defense classes I took actually work. Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. You did good. Really good. The bookstore filled with police more than Marcus had expected, actually taking the call seriously for once. As officers secured the scene and checked on the subdued gang members, a detective approached Marcus and Priya. Detective Sarah Park, she introduced herself, showing her badge. Someone want to tell me what happened here? Priya started to explain, but the detective held up a hand. Actually, start with this. Why does your security footage show systematic extortion going back 3 days across half a dozen businesses in this area? Marcus and Priya exchanged glances. You watched it? Priya asked, surprised. We've been investigating Vincent Keller for 2 years, Detective Park said. When someone anonymously sent us a drive with all this footage this afternoon, we moved fast. We've got warrants, we've got teams picking up Keller right now, and... She looked around at the subdued gang members. Looks like you gift-wrapped his street crew for us too. Wait, Marcus said slowly. Anonymous footage? We didn't send. Understanding dawned on Priya's face. The cloud backup. The camera system automatically uploads to cloud storage. Someone must have. She pulled out her phone, checking her account. There was a download request this afternoon. From a police IP address. Detective Park smiled faintly. Someone in our department's been very interested in Keller. When evidence just happened to appear in our system, they made sure the right people saw it immediately. She looked at Marcus carefully. You wouldn't happen to know anything about how evidence might find its way into our systems, would you? Marcus kept his expression neutral. I wouldn't know anything about that. Right. Park didn't push it. Well, whoever did it, they did us a huge favor. You've handed us a complete case. Keller's organization is finished. As paramedics checked Priya's injuries and officers processed the scene, Detective Park pulled Marcus aside. Heard you took down 5 guys on your own, she said quietly. That's some impressive work. Military background? Marcus hesitated, then nodded once. Thought so. That kind of training doesn't just vanish. She studied him for a moment. Look, I don't know your story, and I'm not going to pry. But someone with your skills, there are better ways to use them than living on the streets. I'm working on that, Marcus said, surprising himself with the truth of it. Park handed him a card. If you're ever looking for work, private security's always hiring. We've got contacts. Consider it a thank you for tonight. After she left, Marcus found Priya sitting on the office stairs, an ice pack pressed to her cheek. Hell of a night, she said tiredly. Yeah. Marcus sat down beside her. You did good though. Kept your head, got help, even took one down yourself. I was terrified the entire time. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do it anyway. He looked at the devastated bookstore. I'm sorry about all this. If I hadn't gotten involved, if you hadn't gotten involved, I'd be paying Kyle protection money right now, or worse, Priya interrupted. This? She gestured at the mess. This is fixable. What you prevented, that wasn't. They sat in silence for a moment before Priya spoke again. So what happens now? You disappear back into the city, I rebuild, and we pretend this never happened? Marcus had been asking himself the same question. A week ago, the answer would have been obvious: yes, move on, stay invisible, don't get attached, but that was before he'd remembered what it felt like to have a purpose. Before he'd been reminded that he had skills, valuable skills that could actually help people, before someone had looked at him and seen not a homeless drifter, but someone worth saving. That depends, Marcus said carefully. On what? On whether a bookstore owner in Vancouver still needs someone to help her feel safe. Someone to run security, keep an eye on things, maybe help manage the more complicated aspects of running a business in this neighborhood. Priya turned to look at him, hope and caution warring in her expression. Are you asking for a job? I'm asking if the offer's still open. The one you made a few days ago. A slow smile spread across Priya's face despite the bruise. The offer's very much still open. But I should warn you, it comes with some conditions. Such as? You have to actually stay. No disappearing in the middle of the night. No running when things get hard. If you're going to be part of this place, you're going to be part of it for real. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of fear and resistance he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. I can do that, he said quietly. And you have to tell me your story eventually. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but someday. Deal? Marcus extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it, and as the first light of dawn began to paint the Vancouver sky, Chen realized something he hadn't felt in years: the future wasn't something to be survived. It was something to be built. The bookstore gleamed in the afternoon sun, its newly restored windows displaying carefully curated selections that drew a steady stream of customers. The coffee bar hummed with activity, and the sound of quiet conversation filled the space between shelves. Marcus stood behind the counter, ringing up a customer's purchase with the ease of practice. He wore clean clothes, a simple button-down shirt and jeans, and his hair was trimmed, his beard neatly groomed. He looked like what he was, a man who'd found his place in the world. Thanks for coming in, he said, handing the customer their bag with a genuine smile. Come back anytime. As the customer left, Priya emerged from the office carrying a stack of invoices. She'd expanded the business since the incident, hired 2 more employees, extended the cafe hours, even started hosting weekly author readings that had become neighborhood events. Marcus, we got another email from that journalist, she said, setting the papers down. The one writing about neighborhood revitalization. She wants to interview us about what happened with Keller's organization. Marcus's expression tightened slightly. What did you tell her? That we'd think about it. Priya studied his face. You still don't like the attention. I don't need it, Marcus corrected. There's a difference between being recognized and being useful. I prefer useful. Before Priya could respond, the bell above the door chimed. Both of them looked up, old instincts dying hard, but it was just Detective Park entering with a coffee in hand. Afternoon, she greeted them. Thought you'd want to know Keller's trial concluded yesterday. Guilty on all counts. He's looking at 15 to 20. Priya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It's really over. It's really over, Park confirmed. She turned to Marcus. Kyle Brennan flipped on everyone to cut a deal. Gave us names, locations, operation details. The whole waterfront protection network collapsed. Crime in this neighborhood is down 40% since you two started this. We didn't start anything, Marcus said quietly. We just finished what they began. Park smiled. Modest. I like that. She pulled an envelope from her jacket. Actually, that's part of why I'm here. There's someone who wants to meet you both. Priya took the envelope, opening it to find a formal letter on city government letterhead. Her eyes widened as she read. The mayor wants to give us a community service commendation? Next month, public ceremony, the whole deal, Park said. You don't have to accept if you don't want the spotlight, but between you and me? This neighborhood could use some good news. And you two are the best news we've had in years. Marcus and Priya exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that people who'd been through hell together could manage. We'll think about it, Priya said diplomatically. After Park left, the afternoon settled into its usual rhythm. Customers browsed, coffee was poured, books found their way to new homes. Marcus was reshelving returns when one of the new employees, a college student named James, approached him hesitantly. Hey, Marcus? There's a guy outside who's been standing across the street for like 20 minutes. Just watching. Thought you should know. The old alertness snapped back instantly. Marcus moved to the window, scanning the street with practiced eyes. A young man stood on the opposite sidewalk, maybe 19 or 20, thin and ragged in clothes that had seen better days. He wasn't threatening, in fact, his body language screamed vulnerability. But he was definitely watching the bookstore with an intensity that Marcus recognized, because he'd been that person not so long ago. standing outside, looking in, trying to decide if he was brave enough to ask for help. "I'll handle it," Marcus told James, already moving toward the door. He crossed the street, approaching slowly so as not to spook the kid. Up close, he could see the signs more clearly, the hollow cheeks, the dirt under the fingernails, the way the kid's eyes darted to exits and escape routes. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked gently, the kid startled, clearly not expecting to be approached. No, I was just. "I didn't mean to, you're hungry," Marcus said. It wasn't a question, the kid's defenses crumbled slightly. "I haven't eaten in 2 days. I saw people going in and out of that place, and it smelled like coffee, and I thought maybe." He trailed off, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I'll go." "Wait." Marcus reached into his pocket, pulling out his wallet. He extracted 2 20s and handed them over. The kid stared at the bills like they were written in a foreign language. I can't." The kid stammered. "Yeah, you can," Marcus said firmly. "Take it. Get food, get coffee, get whatever you need. And when you're done, if you're still hungry or you need help with something else, you come find me at that bookstore. My name's Marcus." The kid's eyes filled with tears he was clearly fighting to contain. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Marcus thought about a rainy night 6 months ago, when a business owner had looked at a homeless drifter and seen someone worth saving. When she'd offered not just charity, but purpose. "Because someone helped me once," Marcus said simply. "And because everyone deserves a chance to be more than their worst moment." The kid clutched the money like a lifeline. "Thank you." "I don't, thank you." "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Daniel. Daniel Torres." "Nice to meet you, Daniel." Marcus extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, the kid shook it. "The offer stands. You need help, you come find me. No judgment, no strings. Just one person helping another. That's how it works." Daniel nodded, unable to speak, and hurried away down the street. Marcus watched him go, then turned back toward the bookstore. Priya was standing in the doorway, having witnessed the entire exchange. She smiled as he approached. "You gave him money," she observed. "He needed it. You do that a lot lately. Help people." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with the observation. "Just passing it forward. It's more than that." Priya held the door open for him. "You've found your purpose, haven't you? It's not just working here or keeping people safe. It's being the person you needed when you were at your lowest." Marcus paused in the doorway, considering this. She wasn't wrong. In the 6 months since that night, he'd quietly helped dozens of people in the neighborhood. A meal here, a job reference there, sometimes just a conversation with someone who needed to be seen as human rather than invisible. He'd become what he'd needed most, proof that rock bottom wasn't the end of the story. "Maybe," he admitted. "Is that okay?" Priya laughed, warm and genuine. "Marcus, you single-handedly helped bring down a criminal organization, you've turned this bookstore into the safest block in the neighborhood, and you've helped more people than I can count. Of course it's okay. It's better than okay. It's who you are." They stepped back inside together, and Marcus returned to his work. But something had shifted in the way he saw himself. For years, he'd been defined by what he'd lost: his career, his purpose, his sense of self-worth. Now, slowly, he was being defined by what he'd built. Not just a job or a place to live, but a life that mattered. One small act at a time. The bell above the door chimed again, and Marcus looked up, ready to help whoever came through. Because that's what he did now. That's who he'd become, not a homeless drifter, not a washed-up soldier, just Marcus Chen. Someone who showed up when people needed help. Someone who proved that strength often lies hidden in the most unassuming places, waiting for the right moment to emerge, and in a city full of people who'd learned to look away, he was someone who kept looking, who kept seeing the humanity in others. Because someone had once seen it in him, the afternoon settled into its comfortable rhythm, and Marcus went back to work, a faint smile on his face. He'd finally found what he'd been searching for all those months on the streets. He'd found home. The ceremony was held in a community center that had been transformed for the occasion, filled with neighborhood residents, local officials, and media covering what had become a story of urban renewal. Marcus stood at the back of the room, uncomfortable in the dress shirt Priya had insisted he wear, watching as she accepted the Community Leadership Award on behalf of the bookstore. She'd tried to get him to stand with her, but he'd declined. This was her moment, not his. None of this would have been possible, Priya was saying from the podium, without the support of this community. And without someone who taught me that courage isn't about never being afraid, it's about choosing to act despite that fear. She looked directly at Marcus, and he felt everyone's eyes follow her gaze. He shifted uncomfortably but didn't look away. The bookstore isn't just a business, Priya continued. It's become a hub for this neighborhood. A safe space. A place where people matter more than profits. And that's because someone showed me what it means to truly invest in your community. After the ceremony, as people mingled over refreshments, Detective Park approached Marcus with someone he didn't recognize, an older woman in a sharp business suit. Marcus Chen, this is Captain Michelle Rodriguez, head of the Vancouver Community Policing Division. Park introduced them. Rodriguez extended her hand, her grip firm. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Chen. About what you did here, and about the work you've been doing since. Marcus shook her hand, wary. Just trying to help where I can. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Rodriguez said. We're developing a new program, community liaisons who work with at-risk populations, particularly homeless veterans. People who understand both sides of the equation. Your name came up repeatedly. Marcus frowned. I'm not a cop. We don't need cops, Rodriguez said. We need people who can build bridges. People with your background, your skills, and most importantly, your perspective. It's a paid position, full benefits, and you'd be making a real difference. I already have a job, Marcus said, glancing toward where Priya was talking with the mayor. Talk to her, Rodriguez said, handing him a card. If she's the person I think she is, she'll tell you this is an opportunity you shouldn't pass up. The bookstore will always be there. But this could change lives. Lots of them. As Rodriguez moved away to speak with other attendees, Marcus stood there holding the card, his mind spinning. Priya materialized at his elbow, having extracted herself from the crowd. What was that about? Marcus explained the offer. Priya listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. You should do it, she said when he finished. Just like that? You don't need me at the store? Priya smiled. Marcus, I'll always need you. But not because you work for me. Because you're my friend, and you're part of this community. This job they're offering? It's exactly what you've been doing anyway, just on a larger scale and with actual resources behind you. I don't know if I'm qualified. You're the most qualified person I can think of, Priya interrupted gently. You've lived it. You've survived it. And you've found your way back. How many people can say that? Marcus looked down at the card in his hand, then back at Priya. You sure you'll be okay without me? I hired 2 new security people last month, remember? And James is working out great. The store will be fine. She put a hand on his arm. This isn't about the store, Marcus. This is about you stepping into who you're meant to be. Later that night, Marcus stood outside the bookstore in the quiet darkness, looking up at the neon sign that cast a warm glow over the street. A year ago, he'd been watching from the shadows as violence unfolded. Now he was part of the light that pushed that darkness back. His phone buzzed with a text from Daniel Torres, the kid he'd helped a year ago, got accepted to community college. Start next month. Thank you for believing in me, Marcus smiled, typing back, proud of you. Keep pushing forward. He thought about Rodriguez's offer. About all the other Daniels out there, the other Marcuses, people who'd lost their way and needed someone to show them a path back. He thought about what Priya had said, stepping into who he was meant to be. Maybe she was right. Maybe everything that had happened, the fall, the time on the streets, finding Priya, saving the bookstore, maybe all of it had been preparation for something bigger. Marcus pulled out Rodriguez's card and dialed the number. Captain Rodriguez? This is Marcus Chen. About that position you mentioned. I'd like to hear more. As he spoke, he didn't notice the young woman across the street, watching the bookstore with the same lost expression he'd once worn. But he would notice her tomorrow, when she gathered the courage to approach. And he would help her, just as he'd been helped, because that's what he did now, who he was. The cycle continued, one person helping another, each act of kindness rippling outward into the community like light pushing back shadow, and Marcus Chen, former soldier, former homeless drifter, now community guardian, smiled as he stepped into his future, a future where strength emerged not from hiding, but from showing up, day after day, to do the work that mattered.